I don't blame Warren Moon for feeling the way that he feels. Lord knows what he went through coming out of college, having to go to the CFL before getting on the NFL level. And nobody knows that better than my man right here, Skip Bayless, who was a reporter back then covering stories like that. And by the way, during that time, one of the few people in America that was calling for Warren Moon to get a shot long before he did. I thank you for that. However, I think we have to be careful here. And when Warren Moon talks about how there's still a ways to go, we need to understand why instead of throwing out statements like that. Warren Moon is justified in his comments. A lot of people in white America are justified to disagree with them. Because if you look at when Warren Moon came into the NFL and you look at today's day and age, clearly significant progress has been made on a multitude of levels. And for any black person to deny that reality, it is irresponsible as well as ignorant. I don't think that's what Warren Moon was trying to say, that there is no progress. What he was trying to say, in my opinion, and I haven't spoken to Warren Moon directly about this, even though we've spoken on many occasions, obviously, including him being on his show. I think what he was trying to say here, however, is something that, Skip, let me tell you, black men, when it comes to the world of sports, get into all the time. Not to say black women don't have those opinions, because you certainly do. But you know what I'm saying? But the dudes that are talking about sports, here's where we have a problem. There were hurdles that needed to be leaped over, that needed to be overcome in order to get to a point where the Donovan McNabbs, the Randall Cunninghams, the Vince Youngs, the Michael Vicks, the RG3s, and others could be drafted, where the analysis that was given about them, okay, you could live off of that. The concerns that, by and large, African Americans throughout this country, and in particular, black folks who are associated with the sports world, have always had, is something, obviously, as a community we suffer from. And that is the subtlety, the subtle things that take place behind the curtains, the things that you can't see. A lot of times when people look at black men and their involvement in sports, they think it's just the games itself. But there's something else that comes along with the game that we inherently embrace. And that is the fact that it is the closest thing to a meritocracy that we can find. Even though politics exist in everything, in the end, by and large, if you can ball, you can ball. If you can get it done, you can get it done. It's undeniable. So when something infiltrates the sports world that allows your status, your cachet, your stature in that respective sport to be influenced negatively, and more importantly, when it's subtle, we have a problem with it. I don't know Noraki from a can of paint. I don't know the man. And
we're talking about the analyst.
That's right. I'm not. I mean, he's the example that has been used as of late, and no doubt Warren Moon was alluding to. He's the guy, Jared Bell, who will be on Outside the Lines today, and wrote about the black tax as it pertains to the black quarterback. That's who they'll be alluding to. But that's just the latest incident. At its core, Skip, what we're uncomfortable with, what I can sit here and speak from, not for every black person in America or whatever the case may be, but by and large, we always have a problem when something subtle is put out there. For example, whether it was Cam Newton, a fake smile, disingenuous, you know, always looking for the camera, with Geno Smith, work ethic, you know, that kind of stuff. You want to say he can't read defenses? Okay, that's tangible. You want to sit there and say he throws too many interceptions? That's tangible.
But the character assaults.
But when the character, the defining of character, because, Skip, it's subjective in a lot of our eyes. And we are very uncomfortable being exposed to someone else's subjectivity that does not know us and who we are.
I hear you.
We're concerned about that. That's where that comes from.
Is there covert racism existing in the National Football League behind closed doors? Yes. You know there is, and I know there is. Just as there's racism in America. Let's accept that as a given.
Sure.
Now, before I speak from the heart and tell you how I feel about everything you just said, let me frame this by saying I did cover some of Warren Moon's games at the University of Washington. I knew Warren when he was in college. I was outraged that the NFL sent him to Canada. This is a man who was going to be a Hall of Famer, a dart thrower, a man who could just wheel and deal, as you finally saw in Houston.
Yep.
And it made me sick what happened to Warren Moon. Then I spent a week with Doug Williams at Grambling ahead of his draft, and I spoke to a prominent NFL GM who told me, Doug Williams, you just have to understand, is just not smart enough to play in the National Football League.
Whoa.
I looked at the tapes with the great Eddie Robinson. Doug Williams could play. Doug Williams was 6'5", 6'6", big arm, great reader of defenses, and broke through and became the first black quarterback to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Went 17th in that draft. 17, you want to talk about a steal at number 17 to Tampa Bay? So now let's fast forward to the rise of the black quarterback. I think it's safe to say that in the last, well, since Donovan was drafted, Donovan McNabb in '99, I'm not sure that black quarterbacks are discriminated against draft-wise. Is that fair to say? Because we've had a parade at the top of the draft of black quarterbacks get drafted. We've had 3 #1 overalls, right? We've had Michael Vick, and we've had Jamarcus, and we've had Cam Newton go #1 overall in the draft. We've had 2 #2s in Donovan and RG3 last year. Not bad. And we've had 2 #3s go in Akili Smith and Vince Young. And on this show, as you know, I have, maybe to a fault, supported and defended Donovan McNabb, Vince Young, and Josh Freeman. And I was driving the bandwagon last year for RG3.
It's not to a fault. You defend those who you think deserve to be defended, no matter
but
what.
Maybe I hung in a long time with Donovan, and I'm still hanging in with Vince Young because I believe he can be a very successful starting quarterback in this league. Now, we get to the crux of this discussion. Intangibles and character are crucial to defining the position of quarterback. Is that fair to say? It can make or break. There's talent, and then there are intangibles. And if you don't have the intangibles, no matter what color you are or how talented you are, you will fail at the next level. So here's my question. This is where I want to get with this. At what point can we break completely through enough that we can critique black quarterbacks just the way white quarterbacks are critiqued pre-draft? Not when they're playing pro football, but pre-draft. Okay? And let me throw one at you real quick. This is from Scouts Inc. that we feature on ESPN.com. Just for the record, Tyler Bray, who is in this draft out of the University of Tennessee, to me is the most talented quarterback in this draft when you consider height, he's 6'6", big pro-style arm. Can I read you quickly?
Please.
A critique of Tyler Bray that's right now on ESPN.com from Scouts Inc. Can we throw that up? Okay. Not a naturally vocal leader, does not show attention to detail. NFL teams are studying his football character closely. Does he love the game? Does he possess the over-my-dead-body gene? Does he have the elite work ethic required to succeed as an NFL quarterback? Similar critiques that we have read of Geno Smith. Fair to say?
Okay.
Okay. Fire away.
My response to that, Skip Bayless, and I so appreciate you asking me that question, because, see, we get to a bigger subject here, and it's something you may not know, and it's something that needs to be said because I believe people like yourself and others have been victimized by our unwillingness to engage in this kind of discussion and to make this a reality. And, Kerry, stay with me because your name is going to come up here in a second. It's not necessarily about the critique. It's about exactly who is critiquing us.
Okay.
See, in the end, no matter how unfair it may seem to a lot of people in white America, understand that the reality, far more times than not, when you talk about the complaints, it's about the disseminator of the message. That's what we have a problem with just as much as we have a problem with the message. You might hear people criticizing you, but they criticize me too. Do you know why we can take it, Skip? Because we got each other. Meaning you're going to get insulted one day. I'm going to get insulted another day. You're going to get insulted by black folks. I'm going to get insulted by white folks. Sometimes I'm going to get insulted by my own. So are you.
That's
and
right.
It's butter. It's okay.
It is.
You understand? But guess what? If you have Carrie Champion here, how many black hosts do you see on television? Not too many. So all of a sudden, if you're critiquing her, it's a problem. Not just because you're critiquing her because she's one of the few, but when it comes to the critics, who are many, who exactly are they? When you talk about the newspaper industry or people who have the license to opine and editorialize, what was the problem in our industry for decades? When you were a columnist, Skip, how many black columnists were there? You see me walking around here. You couldn't even, you could barely count him. He knows.
I can't
you
even
can't count him.
remember.
That's right.
Yeah.
This is why a Mike Wilbon, a Bill Rhoden, even a Kevin Blackistone, the list goes on. There were so few. The late, great Ralph Wiley. I mean, you know, you just saw these guys. They were few and far between. So the black athlete was complaining not just because of the criticism, but they were like, wait a minute. We don't have any of us doing this. So that brings me to Noraki. Guess what? Noraki criticized Jimmy Clausen. He excoriated him.
He did.
Okay, sure he did. The problem, what I said to you last week is, how many Norakis exist of African-American descent in this country that have the license to write what he wrote, that are in his position, that has access to NFL teams and has the license to say what he says, who happens to be black? This is the question that we have. You don't see that so much in television.
I don't know one.
I know that. But what I'm saying to you is we see that. And you complain about it, but not so much on television because we turn around. ESPN, everywhere you turn, there's somebody black that's giving commentary. So guess what? It's even Steven. With the other networks, it's the same thing. You see it in radio, it's a bit more scathing, it's a bit more suspect because there are predominantly and significantly more white radio hosts than there are black radio hosts. Well, the same things when it comes to scouting. If there were a bunch of Norakis that you could point to and there were enough African Americans that were out there in a position to express themselves, then guess what? He wouldn't stand up. But last but not least, could y'all put up this quote, please, from E.J. Manuel? This is E.J. Manuel yesterday. Okay, and I'm not necessarily saying it was wise for him to make this quote because I don't think it was. But listen to what he says. They try to fit us all into the same category as African-American quarterbacks. Let's stop right there. I don't even need the rest of the quote. Who's they? Who's he talking about? This is what I'm trying to get to you when I talk.
Analysts.
He says they try to fit us all into the same category.
He could be talking about GMs and personnel directors,
but what I'm saying to you is what he's ultimately talking about is he's an African-American, and they are talking about us and trying to categorize us. That's a different argument.
Okay.
Because I'm sitting there saying to you, he's pointing to other folks who are talking about and category.
All right.
That's all I'm saying.
But he went on to say in that quote, if you want to compare me to Cam and RG3, I'm happy.
I'm okay with that.
That's
good. These are good people.
That's a breakthrough.
But that's him trying to be complimentary of who they are, what they mean, and what they've represented. But when we sit there and say they, that's where we're coming from.
Okay.
Because we're like, who is it that's critiquing us? That's all I'm saying. You had people writing out there, who is Noraki? They were trying to find out who he was. Why would they? Why would they care? Because they want to highlight who exactly is it that's making these scathing criticisms of us. We want to know. That's all.
But Stephen, it could even be he mentions Tyler Bray, and it's the exam or similar to what they said.
Well, that's a good point
about Geno Smith.
But exactly, and nobody is saying that. You know what? You reserved your criticism for just a black quarterback. Nobody accused it of that. What we're acknowledging is the fact that it will have, in our eyes, it will have more of a profound effect on the career of Geno Smith than it was on Tyler Bray. Because guess what?
It's that black tax that he was
there
talking
you go.
About.
That's the black tax he's talking about.
A higher standard held to a different measure.
That's the problem. Not about football.
Okay.
Not about football.
Sure.
But the personal stuff.